I had lost one income and looked for an extra way to make money on Craigslist and found a delivery driver position. The time is May 2020, Los Angeles, California. The mayhem of the riots and the oppressive fear of the pandemic turned the city into a battlefield as I watched the local news during the day. As a new delivery driver for a juice cleanse company, I was thankful that I worked in Orange County, far from the lootings and fire of Los Angeles. But on that Sunday afternoon, calls and messages started blowing up my phone. My manager broke the bad news to me in a stern voice. "Scott, you'll be covering 2 routes in Los Angeles tonight. The 2 other drivers called out. For this, you will receive extra pay." I had just begun working as a driver, and it was my 2nd week. I felt pressured and unable to decline. The juices and papers with the addresses were waiting for me at the pickup spot, a shadowy and ominous Santa Monica DMV parking lot. The 28 delivery stops included routes from Santa Monica, Venice, Mid-City, and Beverly Hills. The tension in the air was so thick as I exited the 405 freeway. As a striking reminder of the utter pandemonium that had descended onto the streets, the pungent scent of flames started by the looters lingered in the air. Beverly Hills addresses were the first 6 deliveries on my route and went off without a hitch. I gave myself hope with the fleeting notion that maybe, just maybe, I might survive the night undamaged. But when I entered the Santa Monica drop points, things started going south. I needed to take detours to get to my drop-off points. A police car's flashing lights emerged in my rearview mirror during one of these detours. When the governor enforced the curfew, I was instantly seen as a suspect since my car was loaded with so many bags. I was forced out of the car by the cops, who thought I might be another thief. The assumption that I too was a criminal astonished and agitated me. The only items the authorities discovered when they searched my car were the cleansing juices that had been packed with ice packs. They released me, but not before cautioning me. My nerves were fraying, and the night was far from done. As robbers looted establishments, I could hear the wailing sirens of police cars, and the screeching tires of getaway cars, and the smashing of glass. I was a nervous wreck from the deliveries and the flashbacks of being detained by the cops. I was tense by the time midnight rolled around. I still had a few deliveries to complete, and I was terrified of the night's energy. I dropped my guard. I got out of my car without locking it at a drop-off location and entered the lobby of an apartment building. I rushed back to my car, and that's when it happened. The side of my head was forced against a cold piece of metal. I had seen way too many movies and recognized the distinctive sound of a gun's hammer being cocked back, and my heart pounded in my chest. I froze at the looming danger. The voice behind me said, "Give me your money, any jewelry, and all those bags you looted tonight." It was a voice devoid of compassion, and it made me shiver to my core. I paused for a little while to consider the value of my things. My Casio watch, a wallet with just $3 in it, and a bag of cleansing drinks. I couldn't help but let these meaningless things get taken from me. For all I cared, he could take all those cleansing juices if he was planning to cleanse his colon out of his body. Unwilling to show mercy, the attacker smacked me on the side of my head, further confusing me. Then, clutching my possessions and the bag of useless drinks, he vanished into the darkness like a shadow. As I gathered my thoughts after the vicious assault, my senses were in utter disarray. My heart was beating like a drum as I looked for my keys to my car. I rushed out of downtown Santa Monica faster than the blink of an eye, with tires screeching, leaving behind the terrifying nightmare I had played out on those pitch-black streets. I called my boss and described the frightening experience in my shocked condition. My head ached from the hit I'd taken, and more than half of the juices had been stolen. My boss reassured me that I would receive payment and even receive a little more out of pity. I never requested reimbursement for injuries. I fought PTSD for weeks thereafter, while remembering the horrors of that night. I had scars from the assault on the streets of Los Angeles that I had never imagined. I eventually took the difficult decision to leave the job that had exposed me to a nightmare that I would never forget. My time working as a delivery driver for that juicing business was a terrifying period in my life, and up to this day I can't see a healthy drink without flashbacks of that scary experience. The night was dark, and the air was thick with fog as I drove through the streets of Commerce, California. The city had a notorious reputation for its high crime rate, but tonight I had a pickup to do. I was the driver for a rental company that supplied event equipment, and my destination was a wedding venue, scheduled for a typical pickup at 1:30 a.m. I had two co-workers with me, Jesse and Angel, both of them on the younger side, and our task was to pick up 400 chairs, lighting gear, and photo props. Our transport was a massive box truck, the kind you see people use for big moving jobs. On the outside, the wedding venue was shrouded in darkness when we arrived. We were instructed to leave the truck parked away from the ballroom until all the rented equipment was ready to be moved. They had a strict policy, and the security had to be posted by the door at all times due to past incidents of crime. We were left with no choice but to follow their procedures. The three of us got to work sorting, boxing, and prepping the items we needed to move. We had to stack chairs, pack expensive lighting equipment in road cases, and also pack the photo props that included masks, hats, and fake money, like the props used in professional movies. Time slipped by, and it was around 3 a.m. when we finally packed everything to be moved from the ballroom and into the truck. I backed up the truck right up to the ballroom's entrance, and we began loading the equipment. First, the chairs were carefully stacked, then the road cases containing the lighting equipment were secured towards the end. At the very rear, closest to the door, were the boxes filled with the photo prop items. As we worked tirelessly, we couldn't help notice suspicious figures loitering nearby. They eyed our cargo, calculating whether it was worth stealing. Our hearts raced as we continued to load the truck. Our eyes darted around, watching for any potential threats. At one point, while walking and double-checking the ballroom for any forgotten items, we heard a shout from the security guard outside. "Hey, get out of there!" He walked towards me, warning me that we should finish up quickly. The area around the venue was known for loitering and suspicious individuals. He said it's not a place we should be around too long for. We left the ballroom as the security guard opened the door for us. Jesse closed the liftgate, assuring me that everything was secure. We drove off, and I took the truck around the corner, and that's when the odd noises started coming from behind the truck. As I drove down the main street, I heard thumping coming from the cargo area in the back. At first, I assured myself that it was the chair shifting and hitting the truck's walls, but as I turned another corner, the thumping grew louder, more pronounced. I asked Jesse if he was sure he locked the hatch door on the roll-up door, and he replied affirmatively. Still, he offered to double check if I pulled over. Jesse climbed down and walked to the back. As he opened the roll-up door, I heard something inaudible but unsettling. I hurried down as well, sensing that something was off. I couldn't see what was happening inside, but I could see Jesse's movements. He suddenly jerked, and as I walked towards the back of the truck, a horrifying scene unfolded before my eyes. A stocky man with dark hair and massive under-eye bags had been hiding in the back of the truck, and he jumped off and was attacking Jesse. With my instincts kicking in, I yelled to Angel to help. I rushed towards the stocky man, doing my best to pull him off Jesse, my adrenaline surging. The stocky man, realizing he was outnumbered, fought briefly before making a run for it. Clutching one of the prop boxes containing the money, it seemed he thought he had struck gold, but his daring attempt for a big payoff was a joke he would only find out on his own. We were left in shock, the audacity of the man and the surrealness of the situation sinking in. We had just experienced a horrifying ordeal, narrowly escaping a potentially life-threatening situation. As I drove back to the rental company, my heart was still pounding, and my thoughts raced with what-if scenarios. What if we hadn't noticed the intruder? What if things had escalated further? From that night forward, I made it a rule to double-check the cargo in our trucks after every pickup to make sure there weren't any unwanted hitchhikers. Commerce, California had lived up to its reputation that night, and I was grateful to come out of it unscathed, wiser, and more cautious than ever. It was my second year working as a janitor at a middle school in Utah, and I had settled into my night routine. My night shift started at 5 p.m. and ended at 1:30 a.m., during which I was responsible for maintaining 2 buildings, the old PE locker rooms, and some bungalows scattered across an open campus. The school was situated on the middle of a housing community. without any fences or barriers to deter anyone from wandering onto the premises. For most of the time there, everything had gone smoothly. I took pride in keeping the facilities clean and well maintained. However, things took an unexpected turn when I began receiving complaints from the principal and the head custodian. They asked me to double check all the bathrooms and ensure I hadn't missed anything. It puzzled me because I was confident that I was diligently completing my tasks. These questions about my cleaning habits escalated into a sit-down meeting with the principal, the head custodian, a district supervisor, and a union representative. They asked me with all seriousness if I was intentionally leaving unpleasant surprises in the PE locker room for the coach to find each morning. I was taken aback and denied any involvement, expressing my genuine confusion. They warned me that they were giving me the benefit of the doubt, but they would revisit the issue if the problem persisted. I began to suspect that someone else from the staff might be using the bathroom before anyone else arrived and deliberately left it unclean, possibly as a prank on the PE coach. They might have assumed no one would catch on to their antics. A week passed without any further complaints, and I thought that the matter was resolved. That following Monday afternoon, the head custodian called me and informed me that this week would be the deciding phase for my job. The coach had reported the same issue throughout the previous week, but they had held off on addressing it until now. I tried to explain my theory, but the head custodian was dismissive towards me, insisting that I needed to resolve the situation without excuses. That Monday night, as I arrived for my shift, I felt disheartened and demotivated, knowing I was being unfairly blamed. After I finished my run, I sat in the PE locker rooms for a long time, pondering how to resolve the issue. I jotted down notes on my phone and eventually left, locking the locker rooms manually and setting the alarm to the main buildings as I usually did. When I drove home, I usually listened to a podcast on my phone. Then I realized I left my phone in the PE locker rooms. Frustrated with myself, I made a U-turn and returned to the school. I parked on the side street closer to the PE building to retrieve my phone. As I approached the locker rooms, I unlocked the door, opened it, and noticed a faint glow beneath the coach's bathroom door. I hesitated for a moment, wondering if I had forgotten to turn off the lights or if someone was inside. Then, I heard the sound of the sink turning on, and panic set in. I closed the door quietly and rushed as fast as I could to the main building, deactivating the alarm, and ran to the closest phone. I dialed the police and campus security on the school phone, explaining that there was an intruder in the building. I waited anxiously for their arrival inside the main building. When the campus security and police officers arrived, they conducted a thorough search of the locker rooms but found no one except for the dreaded surprise in the toilet. They called me over, showed me that there was no one in the room, and then a thought hit me like a wall. There was a hidden space between the locker rooms. It was the HVAC room, which I had cleaned out once. The only way in was through a closet and up a ladder. I told the officers about the room, and they went ahead and made their way into the closet and up the ladder. The officer shouted, "Freeze! Put your hands in the air!" They ordered the person inside to surrender, and my heart raced as I paced the floor nervously. The officers eventually dragged the man out, searched him, and handcuffed him. He had a school lanyard with a set of keys to the PE building. He remained silent as they escorted him to the patrol car. The following day, the principal offered a heartfelt apology for wrongfully accusing me. I later learned from a staff member that the individual who was arrested was a substitute coach who was living out of his car and who had frequently brought up the fact that he was passed over for the PE coach position when there was a vacancy, but was let go because he was too friendly with the students, and many parents had complained about him. It was a shocking revelation that a disgruntled ex-employee had been the cause of all the trouble. Despite my initial jitters, I continued to work at the school, grateful for the support I received from the administration. The school took precautions by changing the locks and providing new keys to prevent any further incidents. Even now, The occasional rattling noise from the HVAC unit makes me jump. But it beats getting fired for a piece of shit